Welcome to Through the Glass. Oh, shit. Robbie,
Nice.
Forged in Silence.
How do you know this guy's grinding?
Forged in Silence podcast. Wow, that's my other podcast, and I just finished recording 4 episodes of that one.
Let
So,
this guy go, Robbie.
way to butcher the intros, Steve. That's a good way to start this one out. Happy Sunday morning, fellas.
Hello.
Anyways, let's
Happy,
try this one
happy.
more time.
Yeah. I mean, it's
Forged
pre 9 a.m. Mountain Standard Time to timestamp anybody, so we're up early. We're cooking.
cooking with
We
mustard gas, apparently. Welcome to Forged in Silence podcast, where we address issues that men face but rarely talk about. Today, Robbie and I have invited Mr. Solomon, Dr. Solomon, from the other
Thank you.
side of the slope. Once you cross the mountains over there in Denver, found him just recently scrolling through the Instagram profiles, and he's got a little podcast of his own, and it's super relatable and honest. Another guy talk podcast. It was really cool. So, Steven, good morning.
Good morning, Steve. Great name, by the way.
Yeah, I would
What's
have
up
to
with
say.
those Stevens? Are you actually a Steven with a PH and you're just fronting as a Steve? No. Okay. Those
No,
guys.
no, I don't.
Right?
I don't front. There's dudes that front with the V.
I know. Oh, I know. And it's
Are-
like, where do you get off? It should be Steph, Stephe, Steffa.
So, like, are you?
Lame, but I'm telling you,
I
they're
guess. I guess the question is, are you a natural V, Steve?
whack. Right.
Or,
Right.
Yeah.
Oh. And I go by Steve a lot, but my mother, if she's listening, named her son Stephen and David. You are not Stephen Dave. We've heard that since we were very young kids. So good morning, guys, and thanks for having me. Yeah, you're right. Steve, you're over in Grand Junction. It's a beautiful drive down the I-70 corridor. Presuming there's no sideways semi trucks or
Just
anything
not
like
in the
that.
winter. Not in the winter.
So yeah,
Or summer.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, it's beautiful, but yeah, thanks for having me, guys. I mean, I really appreciate Steve when you reached out and talked about, really right off the bat, what was your motivation for starting your show, and would you be interested in coming on and talking with us, and of course, man, I mean, the whole goal is to give information and help arm fellow men and people, of course, across the world with good, healthy information about emotions, self-care, preservation, all those words we'll use today. And I was happy to do it. So just to plug myself, my show. So I host a podcast called the Get In Fellas, We're Going to Therapy podcast. And yes, that is a reference to the movie Mean Girls. So you can see the cover art here. Each week we induct someone into the Bro Motions Hall of Fame. And so somebody who's been a good example for men and emotions across, time. So in the logo there, my first three were Bill Walton, NBA basketball player, notorious Grateful Dead head, Mr. Rogers, and Sigmund Freud. So since then,
Amazing.
we've inducted Joe Burrow, Kid Cudi, but also Charles Darwin, Abraham Lincoln, Martin Luther King, Jeff Probst, the host of Survivor. So men can have set a good example for us all over time and space. And that's really what the point of the show is teaching good stuff that's relatable, applicable to our day-to-day life, and also fun, and trying to get people to, as I say, go to bed that night thinking about something that they did not wake up thinking about is the whole point. So
Really cool.
which same for you guys, right? Just to have reflected and empathized. So yeah, it's a great mission, one that you guys share, and I'm happy to be helping today.
What do you got, Robbie?
Nothing.
Nothing yet. You're still waking up. We get that coffee. Get that coffee into you. I think this is the
You better,
earliest.
Robbie, because I
earliest-
told you guys I could just hit play and talk for 45 minutes to fill all your airways.
So when we talked, the topic I wanted to talk about today was emotional intelligence. I was literally driving from school back to my house, and I started thinking how much emotional intelligence played a role in my life. So when I go back to say 4 or 5 years ago, before I really started doing a deep dive into me and what makes me tick and relationships in general, a lot of it is just me. But when I look at that, I go, my emotional intelligence was a direct reflection of the people I surrounded myself with. And so when I was operating in a fairly low level, I was, what's the words I'm looking for here? Uh, the people that I wanted to connect with, I couldn't connect with because I wasn't able to meet them or understand how to get there, right? Like an emotional intelligence wise, a way to actually connect with people. So this is what I've come to realize, that if I want to connect with people, it's important that I understand that emotional intelligence is key to that connection. And without that, then my level of connection is going to be limited to my emotional intelligence.
And you can think about it as like superficial versus deep,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And it's funny, like that term emotional intelligence, I think, right off the bat, what is it, emotional intelligence? We think of EI as understanding, being able to understand our emotions, regulate them, and then also be able to understand and to an extent influence the emotions of others that we're in. And now, men, if you're listening, let's all not try to be sociopaths this morning. When we say influence others' emotions, we mean get out of our own head and out into their minds, but not in a way to take advantage of people. And so you're right, Steve. What I'm hearing from you and Robbie, I know both of you guys have had journeys with sobriety and therefore growth. Emotionally unintelligent people, I don't like to say intelligent unintelligent because in general it's kind of shamey, right? But in what I talk about, it's maturity. Okay, when we are young maturity wise, and just because we get older, gents, it does not mean we grow up. I think we know that all very well.
I think we can become a child in a grown man's body.
You stay. It's more like you stay a child in a grown man's body, or you
Yeah,
have a stress, a breakup, a divorce, you lose your job, and then you were maybe once sort of an adult, and then you way back with a stressor. But it's maturity, that emotional intelligence, right? So when we're young, we're kind of stuck in our own world. We can't regulate our emotions. We're not really good at putting our mind into other people's minds. That mentalizing or putting yourself in other people's shoes. And then we grow up, hopefully, ideally, and for some people it takes longer, right? And that emotional intelligence comes as we mature and come into our own as adults.
I started at 39.
I probably was like 28 or 29, so I hear you.
Yeah.
I hear
Yeah.
you. I talk about that a lot. Like I guess the whole point of my show is I talk about being an emotionally constipated Midwest frat boy, and I use that construct because I think of most Midwestern men they are nice, and most men can be nice, but being kind implies not doing what you would want done. So the golden rule is do others as you would like to be treated, and the platinum rule is treat others how they would want to be treated. And most men, unfortunately, are not emotionally intelligent, mature enough to be able to get into someone else's mindset and really understand what's going on for them. So that is, the difference of growth, at least how it's felt for me, is like, sure, you can be nice because everybody knows how to be nice. You learn how to be nice when you're a kid. And it really does take extra work to be kind.
You're talking about like surface as opposed to we're back to surface level or
Yeah.
getting that next level a
It's
little bit deeper, having compassion, a little bit of compassion, showing some empathy. Uh, I
yeah.
know
And it's
those
great
are
that there's interchangeable terms, because
buzzwords that um, when you attribute to men and masculinity and the overall manliness sort of thing, it's not something that normally gets attached to that. And I think there's a stigma that surrounds those two. Uh, from personal experience, when I started talking, and this is something I touch on regularly, especially at the end of the episodes. When I started talking is when I started realizing that hearing myself was more beneficial than I thought it was. And if I got it out, I didn't have to live in it anymore.
Get
And
out of our
so,
own head and out into the world, man. That's what it's
I
all
mean,
about.
it's incredibly crazy how much weight gets lifted when you end up finding or sharing whatever it is that's holding you down or that feels like it's holding you back with a friend. One of the problems that we're trying to address, and I think both of us are trying to do this in our own unique way, is give a voice and language to other guys that are trying to figure it out, that are trying
Yeah.
to, like, I can remember from my own inner experience where I didn't know where to put it, and the places I was putting it were wrong. They weren't the right places. So anytime I'm going to throw some vulnerability in here. Anytime I got vulnerable, if you put vulnerability in the wrong spot and and you get slapped with it, you're just gonna shut yourself down more. Like you're done. You're gonna detach yourself emotionally from that, and it turns into anger, it turns into resentment, it turns into a bunch of other things. Uh, it just ends up being unhealthy. So, like,
When you say put it other places, do you mean sharing either with parents, friends, romantic partners? I mean, that you can get what we'd say invalidated, right? In many
yeah,
circumstances, many ways, places.
yeah. I mean, I think a lot of the times, that invalidation comes from the people you love the most, right? That's
Boy, howdy, don't it?
R- right. It's really it is those relationships where like this person is, I remember saying this, I'm like, this person is supposed to love me the way I am right now, and I'm trying to like get heard, or I'm trying to say the thing that I need to say, and it's not working, and it hurts, right? Like, there's two sides to it. I understand that there's two sides to it, but uh when the time comes, it's I'm a different person now because I've failed a lot in that aspect.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we have to, practice, right? And something I have to work with myself and, of course, my friends, family, patients on is like when we tell the truth. So when we're vulnerable, and I've had to learn this, of course, the hard way with my own family and friend groups and bosses and all that stuff is we tell the truth and the other person doesn't react the way we thought they would, or maybe the healthy way. The vast, vast, vast majority of the time, that's a them problem. And it's tough because we're also wired, right, to be like, oh, I said I was hurting, and my dad said, I'll give you something to hurt about and hit me with a belt. And you, not my dad, shout out Alan, but it happens. Sorry, I didn't
Yeah,
want to get
it
that confused.
does.
Hey, I
Yeah.
mean, I'm going to tell the truth. I've had tough times, but God bless, my dad never hit us. And so, but it is common, unfortunately. And so then you think, oh, shit, I should not feel those feelings, or I better not tell somebody. Right. And so it does, Steve, Robbie, I'm sure you've had this experience too. Right. So you got to tell yourself, which takes maturity, right? It takes depth to be able to be like, wait, 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 I wasn't wrong for sharing. That other person must just have something else going on. And that's tough for most people to tease out, especially when we're struggling with anxiety or depression. Our brain really tries to tell us it was our fault.
I think when a lot of relationships have this issue, married relationships, women can tell us how they feel, but the man can't turn around and tell them how they feel. Builds resentment both ways, right? Real quick. And something I'm learning now is you're talking about the maturity part and finding that mature person. There's a very open window there of back and forth learning about this person. I know when I was younger, it was more about looks and, other things in the relationship. Then they always failed due to not being real with myself. And with this maturity now, it's like, whoa, hold on. Um, let's take a deeper dive into this before I even set forth. And I think a lot of men are starting to get into this or forced into this by, the whole toxic masculinity stuff that's going around. And now when men push back, we're seen as assholes, whatever, we have no feelings or we're too open.
Yeah. It's hard to strike that. Yeah. I hear Robbie. It comes up a lot. You know, I think you brought up something interesting, Robbie, is you guys are, definitely on this show sticking with a pretty like classic paradigm. And you two are both great examples of men who are aware enough, who have feelings to share. I mean, I know you guys had to work on this, right? But we got to remember, man, the trauma shoes can go on both feet gender wise and can
Hmm.
go back and forth. So the idea that women are going to be good at holding your emotions as a man, or that you as a man want to share, right? It could go both directions. And so I work with plenty of men who are the listeners. They are the, if we're going attachment styles, the anxious type, and then the women are more avoidant, and that's,
The
it's
anxious
an
type.
interesting dynamic, because when you end up in a relationship like that, people don't really know, like, and it happens. Trust me, man. Women have a rough fucking go in Western society, and I'm
Hmm.
not. That my girlfriend would cut my parts off, to not exclude that part, but to say that it can't go both ways, right? And Steve, if you were in a relationship where it was like, I have feelings, but I can't, I'm not allowed to, I don't have permission to feel them or get them validated by my female partner. People are often like, what? Like, what do you mean? What, how can the relationships aren't like that? And it's I think more and more, Robbie, to your point, as we go, we're seeing that relationships can certainly be like that, but most education or media, coverage around this kind of stuff has been, right, the more traditional way that we're talking here. Uh,
The interesting part that you bring up there is, and I've noticed this in plenty of conversations with other women and just experience overall, and that is exactly what you're saying. So when we say that like men suffer in silence, I think one of the things women have a greater propensity to talk overall, which benefits them, and we don't. But they do experience loneliness in a very same way. They do experience like the trauma, like you said, in Western society, uh, gender roles, whatever you want to, however you want to throw that in there,
yep.
in their own way, even being raised up, because there's plenty of women who have been taught to bottle their shit up too, just
Yeah.
like we have in their own way, right?
I mean, a pretty classic woman of our age group was exactly that. They are a holder of other people's emotions and not necessarily a share of theirs. So a lot of givers who don't take. That's healthcare, therapists, nurses, teachers, right? That type of like give, 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 but don't take when they need to. And that is the really difficult thing. And men, it's interesting, right? Men can look the same, right? That's the makeup of the giving might look different. Maybe men are giving at work, or they're giving, in other ways, physical ways, like you guys have talked about, but kind of needing to take and ask for help and get support when we need it is really, it's truly just un-American to go there. And look, I really truly believe in America and the America we can be and the America we grew up on, of being the best we can be and the best we can be as a nation. But America's at its best when people are really working hard, not asking for help. That's when America has succeeded financially, war times, capitalism, and all that stuff. So, guys, I know I'm in Denver, but like, I come in peace. I would just like our society to be healthy, for us to value healthcare and education, and as a result, us be a kick-ass country, right? So that's my whole point, is that we really, as Americans, are not taught self-advocacy. We are not taught to advocate for ourselves, and that's gender exclusive. I was actually recently at a conference for child psychiatrists, so the national conference for that, and we were having a conversation about masculinity and mental health. And I asked a question to a room of 30 other professional doctors, because we were talking about like specific traits and which gender owns, quote, quote, each trait. And I said self advocacy, and everybody was like, well, men. And I was like, well, guys, I mean, I grew up in a blue collar town. I played football. You didn't talk back. You didn't say what you needed. You didn't say you were tired. You didn't complain. So it's like interesting, because you think men are taught to be assertive, but not really. Maybe people with money, are taught to be assertive, but not most.
We're taught to be assertive with force.
Right, aggressive.
Yeah, aggression, anger, other things. I like that you brought that up because growing up in the household I did, there was no emotion from grandfather or dad. It was do as I say, not as I do, all that stuff. I never learned that. I learned it from my mom. She was able to show me emotions and feelings. But now looking back at the way I was raised, how many other men were raised the same way I was? Don't show your emotions, don't talk about your feelings. And the only thing that you can assert is aggression.
Yeah. I would just a healthy estimate, Robbie, somewhere between 80 and 90% would be my guess. And I've worked with, I was telling you guys, I've worked at the VA with military vets. I've worked in prisons. I've worked in elementary schools. I've worked in nice parts, poor parts town, rural, city, black, white, orange, yellow, green. And it's pretty much the same everywhere. Maybe there's little swaths of like what, San Francisco, Seattle, and New York that teach men healthier stuff in some places. But even that, I don't know. Because I think both the poor and the rich kind of teach kids to shh. And then, so it's again, in my experience, it's pretty standard I think Western culture.
I was just about to
Um,
say. So what you're saying is it's cultural,
of course, yeah,
right? When
yeah.
when you can go across the whole spectrum of like economic spectrum,
Mhm.
and the average is similar probably across the whole thing, close enough.
Yeah.
Um,
I
you're
mean, I like
talking.
Yeah, I mean, I go here, guys, and you're free to slice all this because it gets weird. But like, I have a very rosy-eyed view of what the world could be, and a very realistic view of what America is, and it's a country built on Christianity and military, and so neither of those forces are are mean to teach us self-advocacy, religion in general, for the most part, but we're really not taught to speak up, right? We're given those values, we are given what we are, how to think and how to be. So to kind of be taught to think for yourself is really something you have to learn. I don't think it's something that's given to us.
Well, with our country built on Christianity, it is a way to keep us scared, right? So if you're
Oh,
scared
I'll
all the
go,
time,
Robbie. I will fucking go there. You don't have to look. I don't know what your guys' lean is and how you go. I try on my show to be neutral because I have aspirations for talking in big spaces. But you're right, right? I mean, you've heard religion's the opiate of the masses and stuff, and I do really respect the religious sects, and that can be Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, that encourage free thought and free expression and marriage rights and all those things. But because in general, they're all kind of meant to make the world very small and like box us in. That's generally the vibe.
yeah. Well, it's to keep us controllable. That's my opinion. Keep
Yeah,
us
totally.
controllable. Uh, so then when you have the control, you can do whatever, right?
Hmm.
Um, and think about, you're talking about you worked with people, in the VA, and it's a changing of times now with our military. A lot of young kids do not want to go to the military because they've seen what it's done, or they just don't agree with what our country's doing as a nation. I've talked with a lot of guys that were in the military, still in the military. I've worked with a lot of them, and there are a lot of individuals that have suffered because they chose to pretty much give their life to our nation,
Hmm.
in some sort, going to war. I just want to know what your take on um, where you see, you know, our veterans and their mental health, and as a nation, the fix is there, but it's really hard because the VA, the federal government, all that. Where do you see
I
that
mean, it's,
going?
it's a shame, Robbie. And actually, contrary to what I thought, I looked this up a few months ago. Military recruitment is on the rise. And it's been going up for a little while. And since Trump's election in the fall, has actually been steadily increasing, which I was surprised to hear. But maybe in other ways not, right, with the rhetoric and things that are floating around the country. So it was just one thing that I was surprised by. But I've done a lot of thinking about this, Robbie, in my time both working at the VA as a psychiatrist and, of course, doing this men's mental health thing. So just many thoughts on that, Robbie. We'll start with the 22 suicides a day is a comical misnomer, because it does not account for anybody who is not like registered with the VA in a specific way or with like Veterans Affairs. So that number is probably closer to 50 from when I talk to guys and when I've done the research. So that is shocking, startling.
Yeah. Wow.
Anything that's considered it is only a violent means of suicide. So basically with a gun or a hanging. So they don't account drug overdoses, which I have one of my best childhood friends, military vet, overdose on heroin a few years ago. Like, so that wouldn't have counted. Right. So that's my first thought, is that it's probably even worse than the alarming number, like 22 to 1.
Then the
And
alarming number. Yeah.
and my brain hurts, Robbie, thinking about it, because we I know enough. I have military vet patients that I've worked with in the past and presently. They don't the default is not to take care of the guys when they get out. If you don't know this and you're listening to this, in order to get care at the Veterans Affairs Hospital, which, fun fact, budgets just got slashed for a bunch of my friends who work at the VA here in Colorado have lost their jobs. Everything is shrinking. And sure, it is a giant, slow moving beast that needs to be worked on. But, slashing 30% of the money right off the top probably ain't the answer. And so, but the default is that unless you can prove that the military broke you, you do not have access to VA services. So that process is called service connection. And you have to go through this giant pain in the ass interview to prove that you have. And physically, it's pretty easy, right? If you get your leg blown off, then you get
Right.
services. But to show like PTSD related to the military, right? It's not the default that these guys get taken care of. Most of them end up in the private sector for their health care. And so it just kind of makes me wonder if they're kind of moving right now to be slashing VA college loans, VA home loans, right? If all that stuff is going by the wayside, like why are people going to the military? I mean, again, it's always been a way out for lower class people. It's been a job with money, not only to send home, but also with benefits ongoing. So, I don't know, Robbie. I mean, it's a complicated question. I just kind of threw out a bunch of random shit there, but I think that it feels Vietnamish right now, in terms of kind of the pulse of the country, which I try to, I'm in pretty liberal Denver, right? So the military support vibe kind of go, even though there's the military bases here, Denver and Colorado Springs, huge military, but I try to remind people, like, these are individuals. And so for me, there's a monstrous difference between supporting the U.S. military's actions in certain places, the military industrial complex as a whole, but individual people, dude. Like, I still don't really understand the mindset of people in the 70s when guys got back from Nam and you were like throwing paint on the vet, like the guys coming back. It's like, you think these motherfuckers wanted to go over in the jungle and have Agent Orange fucking blown up and their fucking friends die in front of their face in the swamp? Like, so that's the kind of tribalism, like that black and white thinking that we're dealing with right now. That's the hard part for me, is like, it's not individuals' faults, right? We have societal things we need to get after.
Yeah, I agree on that. It's the world would be, the United States would be a whole other place if we thought of people individuals and not casting them into their silos and whatever.
I'm going to grab a book I want to show you guys. I actually laid 3 books out over my shoulder, but that I thought we might get to, but that wasn't enough.
Now you're gonna have to show us the 3 books that you had over your shoulder too.
I see Lost Connections.
Yeah, do you know Lost Connections?
No.
That picture's an interesting picture.
It feels like me sometimes.
I'm supposed to bring it to the guy's brunch party that I'm going to after this. Okay, so the book I was referring to is called American Character. It was written by Colin Woodard. who was a Washington Post writer. So a mild left slant, but not much. So the idea is America's swing between individual liberty and the common good.
Hmm.
So this like swing back and forth of American time since America was first founded on what is the role of America's government in terms of taking care of its people. And obviously right now we're trending towards an every man for himself situation, which we know at the extreme of every man for himself does not work. And then there's the other side of that, which done poorly looks like pure communism, right? Which is the government takes care of everybody and everybody's equal. So America, if we think about it, and guys, this could, Steve, we can give you another dissertation topic on this for school, but the swing back and forth of America in terms of how it's valued individual people, Robbie, versus like, every man for himself kind of stuff is in itself a fascinating thought piece.
It is. It is. I'm curious about your other 3 books now.
Okay, cool. I have a bunch, dude. We could go all day, but here's ones that I thought we could get to or would maybe touch on. So, Lost Connections is Johan Hari. Great. He actually just wrote a book about Ozempic and like the crave called Miracle Drug. But it's called Why You're Depressed and How to Find Hope. And it talks about again, those connections that and this was written even before technology and social media got out of hand. So the topics are disconnection from ... So meaningful work, other people, meaningful values, childhood trauma, status and respect, the natural world, a hopeful or secure future, and the role of genes and brain change. So it's just super cool because as you heard that list, guys, I think that is something you can, everybody here could resonate with, which is like, okay, if I'm depressed, what are the things that we as therapists recommend right off the bat, which is connect with others, get out in the nature, find purpose or meaning in your work, which at times can be putting food on the table for your family, right? You don't always love your job as long as you can harbor that I'm doing it for this reason. It can be meaningful. More of a connection to your past and understanding your past, and then understanding some genetics. So you can see like these are the basics of how I'd start with a patient in therapy, which is helping kind of identify those root things. The other book, the next book is
I gotta stop you for a minute.
okay, please.
Um, you said, what did you say there? Did you say exercise and get outside in nature?
Of course.
Connection. You said connection.
Yeah, I mean,
You
so
said
this is again the book
connection.
frames it as connections to, but like,
Yeah,
yeah, of course.
and outside in nature. Um, you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Uh, how often, if a client was to come in, this is the question that's in my mind. If a client was to come in, do you just say, okay, let's take an overall holistic look at at how you operate in your life right now, and say, do you get outside and do you exercise? And if the answer to both of those is no, and I can use my own personal experience here because I didn't used to get outside and I didn't used to exercise. And I do both of those now, and sometimes they both go together because I go. I mean, I'm in Western Colorado.
Yeah,
You can
great.
get outside and be in nature and get a good workout while you're doing it. Um, how often is that really, really highly recommended? Like, get the fuck out of your house and go and touch some trees. Like, it sounds hippie and holistic, but it's actually, there's a lot of value in it.
Of
Like,
course, yeah.
way more intrinsic value than taking a pill.
I think it depends on the physician, Steve, and how hard they're thinking. So I went to osteopathic medical school, which is not really hippie anymore. DO versus MD, and DOs are taught to think a little more broadly than MDs are. So it's more in my wheelhouse to do that. But if you're a thoughtful psychiatrist, then you think about medications as a means to get us where we need to go. And if somebody cannot motivate themselves to get up off the couch, or they are too anxious to go to the gym because they're worried about what other people think about them, or their et cetera, et cetera. I'll use depression and anxiety as baseline
Two
conditions.
nasty ones that
Yeah,
stop people from
of
doing the
course.
things that they know are good for
And, and
themselves.
and so if I can, and this happens a lot with people who come to see me when they're just generally trying to feel better, it's okay. We have these things. We have a list of things that you can do. We call this behavioral activation at the very beginning, which is right now I'm a sloth stuck on my couch, and we know that doesn't help. So, how bad is my depression? It's a 9 out of 10 right now. I went out and took a walk, and it's now a 7. We need to do those things. We need to pay attention to them, and we need to notice that we feel better in order to cement those connections in our brain that that's what we need to be doing. And Steve, it sounds like you probably built towards that over time. So if I'm in
Yeah.
a position with a patient where they cannot, again, get outside and exercise. But additionally, Steve, what are the other things that either give us or perpetuate depression, anxiety? Being in a shitty relationship, being
Hmm.
in a job that you hate or that you're taken advantage of, not being able to communicate things that are on your mind, not being able to advocate for yourself. So I think of medications as something that should take the heat off, or as I'll
Bridge.
tell people, the weight off their shoulders, right? Let's lift that weight that anxiety and depression cause so that we can do those things we need to do.
Let's take it to the extreme in me. And what would you say to a person that is addicted to uh, exercise and other, whatever you want to call it, running, cycling, swimming, whatever?
Yeah. Yeah,
Physical activity.
it's a great question, Robbie, because I'm in Denver and we're not far from Boulder. I mean, a lot of people, Robbie, just to give you guys an example, before I do virtual telehealth now. So I see everybody across the country on the computer. I worked for a company based out of Colorado called the Eating Recovery Center, which was high level eating disorder care, my dude. So I was seeing teenagers from all over the country. They'd come sleep out here in Denver with really bad, usually anorexia, sometimes what used to be called bulimia is now anorexia binge purge. So Robbie, I'm really thoughtful about that stuff, man. And we see a lot of it in Colorado, right? Like no sugar, no dairy, no gluten, no this, no that, no this. And then to me, an addiction, and you hit the nail on the head, Robbie. We are all susceptible to addiction. For people to say they are not susceptible to addiction is fucking bullshit. Because in general, we have all in our lives done something to either give ourselves a feeling we wish we had, joy, content, happy, control, right? But then
Hmm.
this flips the other coin, or take away a feeling we wish we did not have, right? Sadness, anger, fear. And then again, we usually control those things. So, what does exercise do? It gives us positive feelings. It does make us feel better. We're controlling how our body looks. We're controlling, especially once we start getting into controlling the food that goes in our mouths. It's very difficult to break those cycles because it's so easy. And that's how people get stuck into eating disordered patterns, especially restriction, is it's very easy to control your food. I mean, if you have willpower, and then if you don't, you eat a lot, then you throw it up or use other laxatives or exercise. So Robbie, that's a long-winded way of saying that, like anything in moderation, most coping skills have value minus, drugs to an extent, right? I mean, alcohol, is, you guys know, is a culturally sanctioned drug.
I love
Um,
that. Culturally sanctioned.
yeah, I mean,
So true. It's
but
so
we have
true. It's so well
so
said.
many culturally sanctioned addictions, right?
Well,
Um,
it's marijuana's the same now.
yeah, marijuana, but like sports betting, sex, pornography,
Yeah.
shopping, gambling in other forms. So food, exercise, like all these things, man. And you guys are smart dudes. Maybe we'll have to talk about this again later, but like we could talk about this just construct all day, is humans and their propensity to not want to feel how they're just currently feeling. So Robbie, I
God,
would say, but you, Steve, I heard you talk about this in your emotion regulation episode, which is like, if I'm feeling a big feeling, I go lay in the grass and just let it be. And that's what I want people to do.
it's
You don't
so.
need to do shit. If you feel bad, you don't need to do anything. Eventually, you're not going to feel bad anymore. That's how human brains work.
Yeah, it's literally. I mean, it's taken a long time for me to learn that it's all temporary, right? It's just like a storm. It'll blow through. It will. I mean, for me, if the storm lasts into day 3, I start an action plan essentially
Which
to
is
begin to move through it because it requires me. It requires a level of self-care action, whatever that is. I don't
totally.
care if that's just cleaning my room a little bit,
Yeah,
doing some dishes.
totally.
I mean, generally my space, how messy my space is a reflection of how messy my head is.
Totally.
And so I mean, I can watch that happen as it's happening, and it's a little bit of a process for it to get there, and then it's a little bit of a process for it
To
to
kick
to
in and
swing
persist.
back
Yeah.
the other way.
So
Um,
yeah, you brought up like when is medication indicated, Steve? You did such a great idea. Let's say you're theoretically talking about like a depressive episode or your mood just being worse and just down, right? What medication is meant to do is lift the floor. So how when our depressive episodes come or when our anxiety is more persistent, lift the floor of how bad it can get and keep those episodes tighter in length, so easier to recover from. So that's the idea, Steve, right? Is maybe if medication was on board, you might that first day or the second day have the energy to be like, okay, I need to start chipping away at this versus day 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, is when people might be able to do that otherwise. And so that's I hope how people hear me saying like, yes, Steve, I agree with you. And Robbie, the feelings will go, they will eventually fade, but I don't want to diminish that for some people, they're either not skilled enough at this point, skilled enough meaning you can learn those things and it's hard work to learn those skills like you guys both have. Um, Not to minimize it doesn't fucking suck in the meantime.
no, like
Yeah.
it's going to suck, right? That's
Hmm.
just like choosing what my suck looks like. I think that's what it comes down to. That even in my suck, I still have a choice on how I want it to suck to a
Do you
certain extent.
when you're doing that, kind of I talk about fake it till you make it, Steve, which is like if you're that's behavioral activation, right? But fake it till you make it is like I feel shitty, but I'm gonna pretend like I don't feel shitty to help myself feel better so I can stop feeling shitty. Do you take the time to like reflect to be like, okay, I felt like this before I cleaned my apartment and after I clear my place, and now I feel blank.
Absolutely.
Because that's got to be really learned,
The
right?
only way I can reinforce the actions that I take that help me get out of where I was is to reflect on where I was before and to reflect on where I was after because my subconscious just wants to keep me freaking comfortable and I
Mm-hmm.
need to understand that even though I'm taking an action that I don't want to take because I don't feel like doing it, I'm gonna get the benefit of it later. This is like I went through this whole phase of uh, instant gratification versus delayed gratification, right? Because that's and we all want it now, and then when it doesn't work now, means it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
And until I can essentially rewire the past that say, I know this is good for me, I can trust and believe that it's happened because I have evidence now that shows me that this is going to work. I have to create the evidence. That's part of the problem is the evidence doesn't exist. I've got 15 years that shows me that if I keep doing this, I'm going to still feel shitty. But I've never done like I
Steve, are
didn't.
you sure you do not want to change your major to become a therapist? Because you just used, let's see, that before and after, that's one therapy session. So you save yourself a $20 copay. And then the rewiring brains lecture is probably another one. And then the building, like, so you've got basic CBT down, Steve. It sounds like you've learned it. So you could probably be charging 150 an hour cash. Hopefully, you'd be kind enough to take insurance and not perpetuate class difficulty, class issues and healthcare access. But you got the bones, bro. I call it the helping game, the people business. You want to get in? Let's get you in.
This is my passion. My definitely my passion project is been in this space. Uh, it's fun. I find the the way we think fascinating in general. Um, and just through my own experience going through these like different levels of shit only to understand, like, I got to the point where I asked myself, why do I have to continue to cause myself pain before I have to enact change? Right? And I do that. I was really good at that. I'm going, why the fuck does this hurt?
We
Why
have
is
to hit
this
rock bottom.
why is this hurting? I'm like, wait a second. Do you mean I can I don't have to let it get this bad before I actually do something about it? And
That's
then
wild.
still I would do the same thing over again and go, like, it took a while. It
Mhm.
took a while to do the same stupid shit over again. And I'm not even talking drugs or anything like that. I'm just like mental loops,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
mental unhealthy thought process, beliefs that I have that don't need to exist, the ones that someone gave to me when I grew up or whatever that might be, that I decided that it was important to me at that time, and for some reason it has to be permanent. It doesn't. There is no idea. It doesn't have to be permanent. The permanence doesn't need to exist. If this is a belief or a way I'm operating that isn't working for me, what the heck do I need to do? How do I change this? And this is where it comes. This is where I get to. You need to freaking talk about it, right? There's people that journaling works really well for them or whatever it is. I'm a firm believer is in just get it the fuck out of you.
Yeah. Journaling
Put
is
it.
journaling's talking far more than being alone with your thoughts.
Yep.
It can be a good step.
Yep.
I was just thinking that as you said it, like the human mind is a terrifying place. And what's more, I would pose you both the question, do you feel like we control our own thoughts?
Sometimes.
Yeah.
It's funny because to me the answer is no, and it's a categorical no. I don't think that the average person is in touch enough with their own thoughts and processes to be in control of them, because we lie to ourselves all the time,
Yeah.
right?
Oh,
We and that is
absolutely.
humans are literal professionals at lying to ourselves. We call it defense mechanisms, right? And it's that's all it is all day. You stay comfortable, you stay in this position, you rationalize things, you suppress these emotions, you deny things, right? All these words we've used, but it's all our own way of not of letting us. I know you guys talked about this in your emotional regulation episode. Avoid the thing or the feeling that we do not want to feel. And in my podcast, boys, we say that avoidance is a dirty word. We swear a lot, but avoidance is the dirtiest of the words we use. So, but yeah, man, we're pros at avoiding human beings, and especially men. Substance use, work, general suppression and denial. We're aces at it.
And we pick and choose what we want to avoid too. Um, there's days I wake up and, want to fix something that's been bothering me for whatever it is. Then there's days I choose to avoid the stuff that's bothering me because it hurts. It's too uncomfortable. And it's how long as Steve was, talking about how long do I want to lay with that? Um, I try not to very much anymore. I'm learning how to deal with a lot of that stuff. And, uh, you know, the anxiety comes from the future tripping of laying with that stuff and not fixing that shit. So now I'm really good. Like, this is how I feel. I'm getting anxious. What do I need to do to fix it? And it's, for me, learning this stuff is a lot of it's very simple. I hate to use
Simple
that
but
word.
not easy, my dude. If it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
easy, we'd already be doing it. So there's a lot of mental health stuff that's simple but not easy.
exactly. It's like once we learn it, though, you can unlearn it. That's just where I'm at because I don't want that anxiety. Um, so I'm dealing with a lot of my own shit all the time.
And
And
you made a point already, Robbie, that to an extent within healthy means and making sure you're nourishing yourself and relaxing and not getting shin splints and not, tearing your rotator cuffs and bullshit, exercise is a good way of helping with that. And Steve, it sounds like you were on one end of the spectrum, and guys, I'm kind of in that middle where I come and go with good, consistent exercise, and I think that's probably the average American. And that it is a good thing, Robbie, right, to help with those feelings and help you get in a healthier mindset. Unless it's your only thing, Or unless, like any addiction, you're meeting criteria because you need more of it to get the same benefit, right? So that's
Ooh,
tolerance.
yes.
Right. So
Yep.
exercise can certainly be like that. I have to get the runner's high or those kinds of things that people chase, or it has to hurt, or it has to be, and that then we're getting into self-harm, punishment. And was your intro episode, guys? Or I've listened to a few that you started talking about, like, oh, we're going into an economics conversation. We're going into this conversation. If you're thinking about the world the way in which I would like people to think about the world, and you guys are very within that sphere as well, it all relates, dude. All this shit, it's all the fucking same once you start seeing it with the right lens. So, oh, what does diet and exercise have to do with positive masculinity and self-regulation? Be like, dude, because we could spin into body culture, how our society talks about body and diet and food. And then we could get into gender roles again.
It all,
It all,
and
yeah.
I was just thinking, I was listening to you talk there, and I'm going, I mean, the topic here was an emotional intelligence and how it works into relationships. Everything in this, you can spin it back, and it'll tie into that completely. Just because it's an emotionally healthy and charged conversation, that alone helps so much. I've screwed up so many times having trying to learn, trying to figure out the words to express myself, because they're not easy when you don't have the language. It started out very simple. Like if you were to ask me what I knew or for words and ways to express myself, happy, sad, and mad. There it is
You
right
guys
there.
ever seen a feelings wheel? You
That is
seen
the
this thing
feelings
though?
wheel. Yeah.
Yeah, that's my feelings wheel pillow that. And I don't, with most of my patients now, I don't even have to actually, they'll just like see me turn and grab it from, but they're like, all right, fine, fine, fine. Because if they're using like that first ring of words, I like, trying to get people to, especially men, right? I was just talking to a 14-year-old boy, great kid, may very well be a college baseball player, all this stuff, but dead inside. And we were looking at the wheel and I was like, how many emotions in there do you think you like know? And he was like, angry,
Happy, sad, and mad.
happy, and like maybe sad, and that's pretty 14-year-old, right? Pretty standard. But just thinking about that, Steve, is like the language requires us to again grow, mature, experience, live. Like we have to develop that stuff. So I try to remind people that we all start out bad at this, and that
Yeah.
in the future, we can learn to get better at it. I like to make sure that people understand we can all get better at this. You just have to try.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hold on one
beautifully.
second. You have to try and not be afraid to suck. Hold on 1 second.
Mm, mm.
It, the language is has been very key in my growth, because angry, glad, sad, all those, they're the only ones I'd use. But now
Mm-hmm.
when I start to feel this, and Steve knows, we can talk about them and put something to them. For me, it's very freeing, because I'm not stuck in that angry part. Well, why am I angry? There's a lot to it, as you know. Like there could be many levels of why I'm angry, and if I can't get to that root to figure out why I'm angry and put those emotions or feelings to those, I'm not going anywhere. I'm just going to stay angry.
Right.
That's just me.
But what's interesting is do you need to know why? I have so many people who come to therapy and they're like, I want to know why I'm fucked up the way that I'm fucked up. And it's like, cool, cool, cool. We can do that. But right now, you're not very good at the what and the how of those skills. So we're going to work first on how to handle these things, what to do in these situations. And when you're better at that, we can get into the why. Because the why, I like to joke, it's not very complicated, Robbie. I could take 20 minutes with you probably with your
Mm-hmm.
story, and you've touched on, emotions, permissions in the house and stuff, and I can tell you why. It's not that
Mm-hmm.
hard.
Yep.
But you can't do anything with the why until the what and the how are under better control. So I hope, Robbie, you've practiced just that self-validation. We talked about validation for others, but we are the worst at doing it for ourselves. That is also gender not, that's gender exclusive, not gender exclusive.
Not gender
Everybody
exclusive.
sucks at it.
Yeah.
And so, uh, in this situation, Robbie, like to start with, I am angry. It is okay that I am angry. It makes sense that you're angry because. And I know that in that situation, maybe the because is feeling blank, but it can start as simple as you are angry because you feel angry. You know you're angry because your muscles are clenched and your jaw is tight, right? So just really starting small and allowing yourself the permission to feel it. And like that's how we get in those loops. Steve, you talked about that. I mean, we all do, you know.
The longer I ever fight an emotion, the longer I hold on to it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I
Oh yeah.
don't, if I can't accept where I'm at, I will stay exactly where I'm at for way longer. It's like a punishment that I'm giving to myself unknowingly.
Yeah. Well, then we're in substance abuse, like addiction cycles of any kind, but it just made me think of like obviously like drinking around the clock, right? Like there's such a hesitance to avoid feeling. And guys, we're talking about fear. I mean, the very first episode of my show, I talked about what's the main reason that men won't go to therapy is they're scared. Is they're scared of what's underneath there. And I hear that more common than anything else. And even with those exact words, not just that I pick up on them with my superhuman feelings powers, that they are scared. It's that they tell me they're scared. And that's what's so interesting is like, what in the world of masculinity fuck did men get taught to be scared of something, right? And your father and your father and your grandfather, Robbie, may not have been saying this, but those dudes were scared
Oh, yeah.
of feeling whatever they were feeling. And they know it.
It's so crazy now to see how scared my dad is of his own emotions and feelings. I can't even, it's,
Feel bad for them.
I do. And it's, I've had to come to the acceptance of it and be okay with it. It hurts, but it's really hard to have a conversation now because I just see that hurt in every single word.
Think when you get better at it, it'll be easier to have a conversation. I think you're probably just not there all the way yet in terms of, when I have people who come and had rough relationships with their parents, barring situations of maybe sexual and physical abuse, the goal is always to reclaim that relationship with your parents. And maybe you have to take a step back, like maybe you have Robbie to kind of see what was going on there when they were acting, how they were acting. But hopefully at some point you'll feel confident enough to push on that stuff with them. And I know that's how it became with my parents, and some of my brothers struggle with this stuff, and most men in my life to an extent. And you eventually are good enough at this yourself to be like, hey, like, why'd you do that, Dad? Like, what do you mean? Well, I brought up something and I asked you how you felt about it, and then you changed the subject and asked me about the Yankees. Well, well, yes, son. I mean, who wants to talk about sad things and be like, well, I do. And they're whether you like it or not, they're there, Dad. Like the sad things are real. They are happening right now. And I would think it would be good for us to talk about it. And so that's the idea, Robbie,
Open
right?
the
If you can come
door.
into a conversation with that, like just empathy, understanding, you're not pushing, you're not making them feel bad. Dad, it makes sense you wouldn't want to talk about mom being diagnosed with cancer. Who the fuck would? And you know what? Just because we don't talk about it doesn't mean it's not happening, dude. Like that kind of a tone, right? And so I hear you, Robbie. It's like you're in that you now have the super magic feelings powers that I was talking about, but they're still like you're in the like early X-Men stages where you're trying to figure out how to use them.
Yeah.
So
I'm still trying to figure out, like, I'm listening to you talk right there, and I probably just cut you off there, Robbie, but I'm listening to you talk right there. I don't have that language yet. I'm still working on one of the hardest parts that I have with language when it comes to the situation right there you're talking about, which is very relatable, is I can't come up with the words for it in the moment. I need to go back, have a conversation with some friends, have a conversation and really dig deep. Like uh it's not, what's the word I'm using? It's not a natural
natural, yeah.
response yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it makes it very difficult, and it's something you can come back to and bring up again. The problem is you have this window of opportunity and you feel like you lose the window of opportunity, and then you wonder if you're going to make everything more tense when you bring it back up again because now is it relevant, blah blah blah. Anyways, there could be this
It's a million thoughts, except, my dear friends, there's never a wrong time to tell the truth.
you're not
So,
wrong.
so when, even if you bring something up, now again, you're bearing, that's what we do in society, religion, and to not talk about the past, right? Like we just are like, what do you happen? And it's actually a sign of immaturity to distort time. So Steve, you get in an argument with with a friend, and the next day you want to bring it up, and that person's like, dude, that was forever ago. Let's just forget about it. And you're like, it was just yesterday. That really wasn't forever ago. So that's like a sign of
Yeah,
maturity,
that's the
that
avoidance.
that you notice differently when you grow, and that time distortion that's a thing of childhood. But guys, like, I will say this so that I don't seem holier than thou to your audience or to either of you guys. I started on this journey myself at age 28 when I was starting my psychiatry residency. So I was already being a doctor. I'd been an elementary school teacher. I'd been a researcher of cancer in mice. I'd been all these things. And I was bad at this shit. I was training to become a therapist. And one of my friends, God bless my best friend out in training here in Colorado, my friend Kylie, who was like, you are bad at feelings. You only know anger. And I was like, well, I mean, she's no, 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 no. You're from the Midwest. I see it. I'm your best friend out here. Right. So, I dive bomb an amazing relationship in 2017 because I was too scared to face the anxiety of moving in together. Guys, the reason I broke things off is because when I went to the gym and saw hot chicks, I was like, well, if this girl was the one, I wouldn't think that other girls are hot. And it's like, newsflash, fellas, hot chicks are hot. And to women, hot dudes and chicks, everyone's hot. And it doesn't mean you don't love your partner. And so that's how bad I was at this, guys, even as recently as 2017. So it tells you, like, to have this language, Steve, to have this language, Robbie. I did not have this less than 10 years ago. I've been to therapy every single week. Shout out my therapist, Heath, my dude. I've been lucky to have the same person weekly for over 6 years now. I've read every one of these books that are on my shelves and in my Coke cooler and on other people's bookshelves because I give away half my books. So, like, I've had to learn this stuff, but I do promise you, and I think you guys are at that hinge point over the last couple of years, which is when you start to see the world how training taught me to see it. This is all you care about. This is the only way you see the world. It's the only thing you want to think about and consume. And that is what's changed it for me. And so to say you don't have that language yet just means you haven't practiced enough. That's
Yep.
all it means.
Yep.
And it's
Absolutely.
hard.
Yeah.
Practice is hard.
And you know what?
It's hard.
I'm okay with that
Yeah.
because
Gotta be.
this is all about the growth, the journey.
Gotta be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I it's maybe a nice way to wrap. I don't know if there's other questions. I mean, I'm not, but I just really wanted to emphasize that I was not good at this stuff, as neither of you were, and that most men are
Horrible.
not. And I'm not
Hmm.
coming here as like, I mean, God bless my parents. They did way better than they were raised, and I'm sure their parents before them in terms of the emotional stuff. But like, another book I was looking at over here, Attached. If you guys haven't read this, great, great,
Nope.
great book. This book
Interesting.
popularized like attachment styles that you'll
Hmm.
see all over the internet. So me and my brother, sister are all classically avoidant, you know. And so when the work, as you guys know, is to communicate and be vulnerable and be authentic, I've had to work on that probably every single day for the last 10 years,
It takes a lot of practice.
and
It
it
takes a lot.
just, that's
And
the
you're
nice thing
probably
about life, gents. As long as you stay alive, there will always be more opportunities to practice.
there will be every freaking day. Before we wrap this up, because I got up and grabbed the book. This is the book, Atlas
Oh,
of the
Brene,
Heart
of
by
course,
Brene
of course,
Brown.
of course,
This is
of
this
course.
is the book that changed everything for me.
Me too.
And it's the book that I read, and it explains 87 emotions according to her research, and it gives great relatable examples of how it shows up in your life.
Brene Brown's one of the, when I think about what I would like to be good at in my career, it is to explain, because doctors are teachers, right? And so to be able to teach these things in a way that is accessible, and Brene Brown's one of the current goats, as we would say in bro terms, of taking these
Hmm.
concepts and making them relatable to people, and using good language. Yeah, she's an all-star, obviously.
Yeah, that book changed the way I see the world in a really good way, in a really positive way, and it gave me the language to start using on how to communicate where I was at.
My shout out for you guys, Robbie, it sounds like maybe this would be a good place for you to pick up, and Steve, I'm sure, is Lindsay Gibson is a psychologist, and I don't know how rich she is, but she got a hell of a book deal based on this first book, and so I hope she's one of the richest people in America. Her book is called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. So, a little comically on the nose, the book title, huh? It's sexy in
Hmm.
itself, but it really talks about the different types of parents who, and the reason this book rocks compared to other books that do similar things is we are not villainizing your parents.
Hmm.
People do not want to go to therapy because they do not want to blame their parents. I'm not asking you to blame anybody. But if somebody has hurt you or somebody has left you feeling uncomfortable, the more you understand them, the less likely you are to hate them or blame them.
Agreed.
Right? We
Agreed.
don't
Yep.
excuse violent crime, but otherwise, I could excuse damn near every criminal in this country based on their experiences and how they ended up doing what they were doing. And so that book does a great job of explaining the types of parents, if this was your environment, how it impacted you, different traits. And I know you guys are both fathers. Like, you're going to read some of this shit and be like, ah, fuck. I still do some of
Yeah,
this shit with my
I've
kid,
I've
huh?
I've already
You
said
know?
fuck when it comes to that, and what it does is it makes me try and show up as a more emotionally available father
Which is,
is what it does,
yeah,
right?
it
It
puts
lets me
fear in your
allow
bed and be
things,
open to feedback.
yeah,
You know,
open to
all that stuff that our
feedback,
parents weren't.
open to just allowing things, allowing emotions to exist and saying, okay, like it's all right for you to just be here where you're at right now. Let me know how I can like I just support that, right? Just show up as opposed to the constant fix it model,
Yeah.
that fix it model or put it away model that seemed to exist back then. And it's okay that it exists back then. That's a lot of it is just what we knew and how we knew it. And we're allowed to, I think, continue to evolve. And I'm going to just evolve and learn more about ourselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're here. One of the reasons why we put this podcast together is just because through our own experience, Robbie and I, uh, working through this stuff, talking, giving each other space to say the things that we need to say, the shit that burns when it comes out of your mouth. I think that's an Andy Grammer quote. Uh, but it's important, and I know we touched on emotional intelligence this in relationships all across the board in this episode. It was phenomenal. Thank you for showing up, Steve. Really appreciate everything that you brought to the table in this episode. I know our audience is gonna really enjoy this. I'm finish this episode off the same way I finish all the other ones off. For the men out there that don't have a place, that feel like they're lost, that are stuck in the rat race, that are stuck in their own minds, there's a lot of men out there that are willing to listen. And for me, it was a strangers saved my life. And sometimes it's okay to go outside of your own box and reach out and say hi and say, I need someone to listen. And I'm sure if you were to reach out to any one of us, if you're here now and if you made it this far, and shoot us a DM. We're available on Instagram. We'll have all of Steve's. Uh, uh, you can send us your links and stuff, Steve, for the
Of
show
course.
notes. We'll get those in there. But men don't have to suffer in silence, and it's all right to speak up. And if you need some help, we're here.
Of course,
Thank you guys
gents.
for listening, and thank you for joining us, Steve.